Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 324 of the Canadian Football Countdown, a proud member of the Canadian Football Podcast Network and the Alternative Football Network. Last week, we previewed the East Division in a 2-hour East Division extravaganza. And this week, we're here to preview the West Division in the CFL. How long can we possibly go with an extra team to cover? Hopefully, not that long, but we're here tonight, Ryan and Trey, to talk about the West Division. Trey, we had you pop in for a little bit last week, but this is the first time we're seeing you here in a while. How you been?
Oh man, I'm doing good. This never-ending winter in Manitoba. Seems like I was just in Toronto over the long weekend, and there was plus 32 on the holiday Monday. So I mean, some parts of Canada have summer. It's good to see. Saw you know what? Actually, I drove by BMO with the new temporary seating. And that doesn't look like an Argo Stadium anymore, to be honest. That looked massive, just with everything going on. So, yeah, real excited for the football season. Preseason started on the holiday Monday, which I guess we're gonna have to get used to, right? Yeah. Anyway,
Yeah, because
lots of
that's
things. A lot of things. You know what? We what our last show really. Did we do some free agent stuff? I'm so out of it.
not really. No,
Not
we
really. So really, we haven't talked since November, and God, it seems like this is a completely different league. Completely, like the players and the team seem to be mostly the same, but just the season starting, the playoffs, the Rouge, this, that, 55, everything, which will slowly, change into this new era of CFL. I don't know what I want to call it, but anyway, it seems like a whole different world right now we're living in.
yeah, you're not wrong. And yeah. On talking about the never-ending winter, I like to say we're at winter number 8, and we're
Yeah,
striving for 10 this year in
yeah,
Winnipeg. But it's
yeah.
supposed to be nice next week. It's supposed to be all high 20s, so we'll see if that actually sticks over the coming days. But yes, a lot has changed in CFL since we've had you back here properly to talk about it. So I'm sure we'll get into that throughout the season. I think more of the drastic changes are coming next year. Quick thoughts from you on the playoff format changes?
If you're in our Discord, I kind of hated it at first because 8 out of 9 doesn't sound great. But but I guess it's the way of the world. Like NCAA, I think they just expanded March Madness to have more play-ins. Baseball expanded more playoffs over the last few years. I'm sure the NFL will go to 8 at some point. They already went to 7. What basketball has play-ins. I don't know the soccer one off the top of my head, but the World Cup has went from what traditionally 32 teams to 48. You know what I mean? Like everything's expanding. And I guess the hope is that, because it's someone I can't remember who. I've seen it multiple times on Twitter, so I'm not trying to steal it. So that's not my idea. But this seems like a plan for 10 to 12 teams,
Yeah.
and it really does. So maybe that is some of it. Now the stadium changes. Again, we could talk about could implement that. I still cover the Birmingham Stallions for our buddies at AFN. League like that. I'm not saying we have to merge with the UFL, but some of those teams seem to struggle. Would that be, a possibility? Could we have Birmingham in the CFL? Could we have North Dakota in the CFL? By 50, the field will fit now, or a lot better, right? So it just would be visa issues, I guess, because we could talk about that with how we got a quarterback because of a visa issue. But,
Right.
but the playoffs, because again, if you look at it as play-in games, I'm okay. I'm okay a little bit more. I'm not a big fan of the 1-2 game. Um,
Hmm.
because everywhere it said taking things from curling. Okay, curling, but you're not getting CTE very often in curling.
That's
You know what
true.
I mean? You're not breaking someone's chin on the other side in curling, unless you're
Hopefully
Canada
not.
and Sweden at the Olympics, right? But see, we got so many callbacks to do. If we got 4 or 5 months of jokes.
Yeah. The
So
Olympics was a while ago.
so that's the only one I'm not a fan of. But what else are you gonna do? You can't give the one team a 2 week bye like that because then you start talking to the rust versus rest. So I guess you got to do something. But I'm almost curious if we're going to start seeing maybe sometimes the teams might rest guys that game. Like, okay, we got a home game next week anyway. Do we
Yeah.
want to risk? Do we want to risk hurting? Nathan Rourke. If Nathan Rourke gets hurt in that 1-2 game, that ultimately doesn't mean anything. Other than you have to play 2 games versus one. I don't know. There might be some guys that not want to lay. I'm not saying they're going to rest starters, but you might see that fourth quarter you're down 10 points. Do you want to break your ankle
Yeah,
doing
true.
that? When so I think we could see that potentially. But again, if we get to 12 teams, then at least, I think the 1-2 still is kind of but maybe there could be some jostling around.
I love it. Got
Yeah.
you firing on all cylinders right
Yeah.
out of the gate here. Let's go back into the housekeeping notes. I
Yeah.
had a
Sorry.
couple
You wanted
quick
a quick
things for.
episode, man, and you can't ask me these things. Like,
I've just been itching to hear from you. For
yeah.
the phone line's been there. No, I can't talk. I've been crazy busy myself. It's been a scheduling nightmare amongst us here on the podcast. That's why you'll never see three of us in the same place at the same time, it seems these days. But nonetheless, the content will go on. The Canadian Football Countdown is brought to you by our presenting sponsor, Game Time TV. Learn more at GameTimeTV.ca or at Facebook.com/GameTimeTVMB. And as always, we want to acknowledge that the Canadian Football Countdown is brought to you from Treaty 1 territory, traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota, and Dene peoples, the homeland of the Métis Nation, as well as from Treaty 4 territory, traditional territory of the Cree, Saulteaux, Dakota, Lakota, Nakota, and Métis Nation. Also, check out our Discord community, and it's an important time to do so because we're at the start of the CFL season right away, which means we're at the start of the CFL fantasy season, and we like to run CFL fantasy leagues. You want to talk about that, Trey?
Oh yeah, I'm running one again. We're doing on the commission of the Discord League. I've not, I'll be honest. I haven't had 2 seconds really to look at what's coming on the CFL website. Is like outside of something you sent me, 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I think I skimmed it. So I'm not too sure what to expect as a commissioner, but I'm looking forward to fantasy now with the season long option, right? Even if it maybe
Yeah.
doesn't work necessarily with 12 teams, which it might look like we might have. We're at 9 or something, so I'd like to have at least 10. Who's starting the backup quarterback?
Yeah,
Yeah,
the season long version on the site it only has the option for 4 or 6 teams. So I think
yeah,
Orange League we will probably likely have to stick with our weekly format or come up with something
yeah,
creative
yeah.
amongst there. But I have such a bone to pick with the CFL with the launch of this fantasy site. Every day, every couple days, new article coming out teasing all the things around planning a fantasy draft, but they're missing the one thing you need in order to organize your fantasy draft, the actual
You
fantasy
know,
to play on.
I, I see that, but we're living in a world right now where we're waiting for GTA 6. So I kind of like what they're doing because it's the exact same thing that the GTA 6 is doing. They'll make something that sounds like there's going to be a post, but then it's just going to be about Red Dead 2 online. You know what I mean? And I think the CFL, I think honestly, this was probably smart because in the past they drop it and then it wouldn't work.
Right.
Right, with stats, fantasies, issues, everything's had issues, right? So I think they're teasing it, teasing it, teasing it, and really, in a 6 team league, I mean, I guess you got to get some time up. What do you got to do? Just have it drop by next week? If the game starts on the 4th, isn't it?
Yeah, like you probably shouldn't be doing your drafts too early in advance, and you can
Yeah,
kind of coordinate with people to schedule it, but waiting to see how it opens up, like you said, see what commissioner tools are available, how they're
yeah,
kind of structure the league on there. I know we've been talking about shifting our private draft league into using that site, and so well, how do we handle the keepers and things like that around it? And so I think there's a lot of trust issues out there, though, when
that's
it
fair.
comes to the CFL and their technology, based on the stats issues, things like that, the website crashing during the draft and stuff, and the fact that they keep teasing, "Hey, this year we're focusing on the website. We're having a new mobile app, a new fantasy site, new fantasy game coming out." And we're like 2 weeks away from the start of the CFL season, and it's not here yet. I think there's a lot of people nervous out there that they're not going to have the site ready in time for the start of the season, which kind of makes doing the season long drafts pointless.
No, that's fair, and I could see that, but I guess at the worst case, they just do the week to week one. They already have that established, right? I guess
Yeah.
I know it says coming soon on the website, but maybe they're tinkering with it again. But I hate doing back end stuff on my websites and stuff, so I'm not a computer guy. But I'm sure it's a control delete but kind of situation, and you could just do the week by week one, and it is what it is. But again, I see what you're saying, but Man, I just want a GTA 6 update. Like, I don't care about CFL. No, I'm kidding. It's but yeah, just thank God we have it, and 4 to 6 leagues. You know what? Hey, if you have 12, you just got to do two conferences or something. Got to figure something out, right? And
Yeah.
there you go. So I'm
I
okay with
just
it.
I just hope to God that they don't unlock it at the very last minute and then everybody's scrambling to get their drafts into there and then it crashes the site because they couldn't plan for that. Like that would be such typical CFL website handling
Yeah.
over the last couple of years. But anyways, hopefully the CFL fantasy site will be up and running soon. So if you do want to join our Discord league, get into the community Discord, or if you're already in there, we've got a lot of good folks in there that have already signed up. The link is in the episode description. It's free to join us over there. We've got lots of CFL fantasy chatter, CFL general, CFL betting, really anything and everything, game day threads as well once the regular season kicks off. So come join us over there. Link is in the episode description. It's free to join, and do not send spam messages. I think I've locked it down now. It's been a quiet week, finally. The phone hasn't been blowing up from messages that I have to delete, so it's great. It's good progress. All right, let's dive into talking about the West Division here today.
Yes.
Trey, we've got 5 teams to talk about. Which one do you want to start with?
Yeah, I start with BC, man. I know you're itching.
I'm always itching to talk about the BC
Yeah.
Lions. How could I not be?
Yeah.
Let's see. The BC Lions finished off 2025 with an 11-7 record, 3rd place in the West Division. Ended up tied with Calgary, but lost the season series there. They go on to beat the Calgary Stampeders in the first round of the playoffs in a really close game there, and then fall short in Saskatchewan in the West Final. With the story, I feel like being once again year after year, BC comes on strong in the regular season, especially in the second half of the year, and then falls short in the playoffs and can't get to the dance. How are you feeling about the BC Lions entering this year? Because this will be an interesting conversation because I'm often somebody really high on them, and I know you are a lot more skeptical.
When does this playoff thing start? Not till next year, right? Right, 2027.
Yeah.
Because he's growing on me in the regular season, but Nathan Rourke's like, you need to win in the playoffs, right? Like,
yeah,
especially when ultimately you get 1 or 2, like just 1 win and to get into the Grey Cup, or 2 wins to the Grey Cup. Like, it's not, this isn't, 28 games, a hockey series and stuff like that. It's, you have to win. And he's giving me Josh Allen vibes, like crazy, like really good, really popular.
see it.
But there's always there's always a Mahomes out there, or there's always like you've got crazy weather in Buffalo. And BC, they're used to the dome. They may come to Winnipeg or Saskatchewan in November, October, starting next year, but it's still going to be cold. Like he just doesn't have that. But they seem to be the top team to beat in the regular season. Them in Saskatchewan, I think. But we'll get to that. But he was second in passing yards, Nathan Rourke. So if you want to talk about, do we want to take the way on the betting, or do you have anything on BC? Or we could talk about whatever.
Just sprinkle it in throughout. Yeah.
Whatever. Nathan Rourke, what you have his over under for passing yards 4,650.5. Well, he had 600 more yards than that last year, and he only played 16 out of the 18 games. So I'd probably hit the over on that. And again, I think the only issue you would have with Nathan Rourke not hitting that is a long-term injury. So that that's pretty simple for me. And you have if there was a most outstanding Canadian bet, I'd probably it would pay nothing, but it would be the one that you would put the ant farm on, I think, a little bit for most outstanding Canadian, and maybe even most outstanding player again if he stays healthy. So
he's got the highest odds in the league at most outstanding player from the odds I pulled from FanDuel before the show. Last year Nathan Rourke did it all, and there was so many question marks around him coming into the year last year, also because he came back from the NFL second half of the season the year before. It looked pretty shaky. There was all the drama of VA versus Rourke. They were going to stick with Rourke. I thought it was the right decision. I thought he would settle down with a solid training camp, and he just came out and he lit it up last year, like over 5,000 yards passing. He averaged 330 passing yards a game. We're going to start talking about some other teams here where half the teams in the West Division were averaging 250 or less. a game. So that's almost 80 more passing yards. Plus, you throw in his rushing ability from last season as well, where he was, he rushed for 564 yards and 10 touchdowns on top of it also. So Nathan Rourke really, he is one of the top faces of the CFL. I think there's no question about that. I think if he can stay healthy, it's reasonable, like you said, MOC, probably pick him as a front runner for the next couple of years. And it's tough because there's a lot of good Canadians in the CFL and there's a lot of good Canadians in the West Division. Like, I'm going to miss some people naming it here, but like you talk about Nathan Rourke, Brady Oliveira, Samuel Emelis, Jalen Philpott kind of on the rise in Calgary there. Well, like, the fact of the matter is, because of the way the divisional voting works for it, that like these guys are going to miss out on being most outstanding Canadian, most outstanding player nominees more often than not if he can keep up the pace he's going here. Sprinkling fantasy into it as well. We're going to try to go a little more fluid this week than we did last week with the East Division previews and just sprinkle in the fantasy and the betting talk throughout, talking about the storylines for each of these teams. In my mind, without a doubt of a question, Nathan Rourke has to be the first player off the board in every single fantasy draft this year. I don't see another player who came close to competing to his level last season when it came to fantasy stats. He averaged 25.8 points a game on the entire season, and that includes like maybe one or two games where he dipped there. And more often than not, you're seeing 30-plus point weeks throughout the season. So I think Nathan Rourke, if he can continue at the top of his game, he's been practicing throughout the offseason, playing in like a flag football pickup league or something like that in BC. And he's going to continue to make the rest of the team around him stellar as well. He's got the same kind of top weapons. He's got Justin McInnes. He's got Keon Hatcher there still this year. Javon Catoy is good old reliable. They do lose Aiden Eberhardt, who actually put up a solid 800-plus yards last season. He's going over to Ottawa. So that, to me, is one of the biggest storylines around BC is who's going to fill the last spot at wide receiver there and who's going to step up, because Rourke seems to find somebody to turn into a top-tier receiver every single season. So it sounds like, from what I've read from training camps, that it's going to be Kieran Poissant, who has been with the team for a couple of years and is a Canadian, filling that fifth spot. So interested to see what he does there. What else on the BC line side of things interests you?
I was trying to pull up the defensive stats because let's just see how they did last year according to this website. I couldn't find them on the CFL website, so I'm not sure if this is accurate. But according to this site, they gave up 499 points, kind of in the middle of it. Average 27.7. That's a little higher. Gave up just shy of 1,900 yards on the ground. Again, kind of in the middle. Passing yards, 4,400. Second best in the league according to this, other than Montreal. So actually, their defense isn't even the one necessarily losing their games. Kind of thing, or losing the big moment. Maybe it's the big moment again where there is a big catch on the other side. But it's just the defense that's always kind of been the one. It's always when the team has a real great offense, salary cap, somewhere's got to eat it, right? And it could just be sometimes little holes in the defense that let things go. And I think that's the one thing maybe could be helping BC too, because that defense shuts down the other team better and gives Nathan Rourke more time in those high critical games. That's how you win ball games, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think their defense, you listed off a bunch of stats, are kind of bottom half of the league in a lot of them in the season. We saw, especially late in the year, them really struggle at times. But when you have an offense that's putting up over 30 points a game, you're still going to win more often than not, even if the defense, you can afford for your defense to do so. If they can turn things around on the defensive side of the ball this year, that's huge as well for locking that down further. And they did bring in some pieces like Darnell Sankey's the one that stands out the most to me, one of the top linebackers in the CFL going over to BC. They do, I think, Micah Awe departure there. So, trade one top tier linebacker for another, but that's a big piece to add to their defensive side of the ball. One area I'm a little concerned with the team is actually the offensive line a little bit, and that's because Jarrell Broxton was basically the top offensive lineman in the CFL last year, one of the top ones, and he was the big free agent fish that went over to the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. So Rourke's got the scramble ability to get out of sticky situations, but we also saw a couple games early last year in those matchups with Winnipeg where they kind of had him running for his life, and he really struggled early on in that season as well. So we'll see how who fills the void on the offensive line. They do still have some good offensive line talent there, but that is probably one of my larger areas of concern coming into the season.
Ditto.
What else do we have on prop bets here for the BC Lions? They have the second best odds at the Grey Cup at plus 380. I can kind of see that with the momentum they had going into the playoffs that year. What do you think on regular season win total over under 10.5?
I'm so mad at this. I had my top fives and my over-unders all on a sheet that I lost at work, whatever, 2 or 3 weeks ago when we had that episode. So I can't remember what I had because I did go through every week and going like, this team should win, and this. And I did have some numbers, and I did have BC, I think, second or third with that. 10, 11, and 7. I think they go over because, again, I could see maybe them and Saskatchewan kind of being at 12 and 6, and it comes down to a tiebreaker or something. Like that's kind of where I see this division heading, unless Caleros and Vern Adams will go out of their mind, and I can't really see much of Edmonton. But we'll get to that. But yeah, it's not that would hit the over. But I would not take the Grey Cup winning bet only because you're getting no value, and it's more there's a couple other teams farther down that could have more value and worth it, but they have the second most best odds because they're the second most likely team to do it. So
yeah. That is how it works. Yeah. I would go over as well. I think 11 and 7, 12 and 6 is the right spot for this team based on everything you said there as well. We talk about Nathan Rourke being an obvious early pick in fantasy drafts. I mean, BC houses 2 of the top receivers in the league as well. That should probably go in the first couple of rounds on a high-powered offense. Keon Hatcher led the league in receiving yards last year, I believe, and Justin McInnis led the year in receiving yards. He's led the league in receiving yards the year before. Plus, he's Canadian, and if you're doing the new season-long drafts on the CFL site, there is that national flex spot. So it is important to find good Canadian talent there. So I'd expect those 2 to go fairly early in most drafts. In terms of their props on the year, McInnis at 1050.5 or Hatcher at 1200.5. Which one do you like more?
Good question. I probably would take Hatcher. Yeah, I'd probably take Hatcher over. I'd probably take both over. Because the thing about BC is they have the top guys, but sometimes those are the only guys getting the ball, right? We've seen that a lot where one of these two guys, it kind of goes back and forth between this guy. McInnis gets 100, Hatcher gets 100, McInnis gets 100, Hatcher gets 100, and then a couple other guys get a couple, 20, 30, 40 yards. It's kind of what it seemed like, especially in fantasy. It was hard to pick some other BC receivers at times, so I probably hit over on both. But if I had to pick one, I'd probably go Hatcher. I think that 1200 is pretty reasonable.
Yeah, I mean, he hit 1,688 last year. Yeah. So you'd have to have quite a bit of regression there. I agree. I would go that one more so. McInnis, while he was more dominant the year before and really had that connection with Vernon Adams, he still obviously had a really good connection with Rourke. He caught over 1,200 yards last season, but he kind of became down the stretch the end zone touchdown guy for him, and had some huge games in the midst, but then he had some lower ones, whereas Hatcher was just 8+ targets like most games it seemed throughout the season, and that was leading to multiple 100-yard games. So I would definitely go Keon Hatcher there. We haven't talked about James Butler at all yet. James Butler had himself a very fine season last season and finished the year with 1,200 yards on the ground, another 400 plus through the air. And they've got his prop at 900.5 on the season. What are you feeling about James Butler?
I hate to say it because at some point someone's not going to get yards if we keep hitting overs. We hit over with Nathan Rourke. We're hitting over with this, over with that. But I could almost see this one potentially being an over as well, just because it is such an important thing. He, again, I know you just said it, 300 yards over that last year, playing pretty much all season. So again, I have a barring injury, if there's some injury concerns that I don't know about, I probably hit the over.
Yeah, I would too. The only thing I would take for pause there is we did start seeing more down the stretch of Xander Horvath come in and spell him off a little bit last season. It was kind of minor, I would say, but he was also nursing that injury last year. That played into that a little bit. So I could see a little bit more so. Do we save James Butler for later in the season type of thing? Sprinkle him in throughout. 900 doesn't seem that hard for him to hit, though. So I would still go the over on it as well. And I think James Butler is one of the most valuable running backs available for fantasy as well. He's kind of the underrated one in the mix, right? Because you think about, when you think BC's offense, you think the passing attack, you think Rourke, you think Hatcher, you think McInnes. Well, James Butler gets involved quite a bit in that as well. Like, he had 70 targets last year, which is what you want from a running back. It just might not be as flashy at all times, but he was the number one running back in 5 or 6 different weeks last year. So,
yeah. Well, the thing why I would like it is, like you said, he finished third in rushing yards and he hit over this while a good chunk of the season he was nursing an injury and kind of splitting the picks, right? So, or splitting the reps. So I could see 900. Yeah. I mean, he could still split the reps and him and Horvat could combine to 1,1600 yards. It wouldn't be shocking, right? So.
Absolutely. Let's move on to our next team here. Where do you want to go next?
Let's just go Calgary. That's in order in your little notes.
All right, we'll go in the alphabetical order here. Calgary Stampeders are next. Interesting year last year for Calgary because they really came on strong after seemingly falling off before that. 11-7 record, and through the first half of the season, we were calling them the best team in the CFL, and then it all kind of started to fall apart defensively in the second half of the season when they were really strong. And then they brought it back, made it into the playoffs, and made it close against the surging Lions, but was not good enough despite the 11-7 and second in the West finish for them. What do you think about Calgary coming into this year?
I don't have high hopes for either of the Alberta teams, and I don't know why, because I was very high on Vernon Adams, because again, I see why you go with Rourke long term, but that one season, I think if you wanted the cup, I think you ride with VA. I get, I see both sides of that one, and he was playing great out there, and then comes to Calgary, it's just not quite the same. He'll have a game. Didn't he have games where he's throwing 2-3 interceptions, but somehow they would win, and it's just a weird kind of thing in Calgary, and I don't know. I'm not feeling either Alberta team this year.
Yeah, Vernon Adams for me last year was a disappointment after the hype. The hype around him from the season before he got injured in BC, and maybe he wasn't quite the same coming back from that injury. I think also some of it plays into the Dave Dickinson passing offense and these days, where Calgary has that fantastic Hall of Fame legendary quarterbacks for many, many years. But we even saw, in his last couple of years, Bo Levi Mitchell struggle in that offense. Then Jake Mayer was supposed to be the next big thing, and he struggled a little bit. And now Vernon Adams comes in, and he completed more than 20 passes twice on the entire season last year and averaged only 249 passing yards. He also didn't use his legs the way he has in the past, only averaging 19 rushing yards a game. So this wasn't the big play VA really that we're used to seeing. 21 touchdown passes on the year. I remember big storyline last year through the first 3 weeks, no touchdown passes when everyone is expecting him to light it up. And I think it's a pretty telling thing when you look at those FanDuel prop bets that we were talking about. There's not a single prop listed for receiving yards for the Stampeders because the this is an offensive style that really likes to spread the ball around between everyone, and they have a lot of good talent, but nobody shines as the number one guy out there. And I think that maybe doesn't mesh well with the Vernon Adams style.
No, that's completely fair. Because again, yeah, he looked like a completely different player at times. And like I said, what you said, no passing touchdowns, but they were winning games, or like they were doing okay, right? Like so you were just doing a bare enough to win. So again, Calgary's a weird one where I could see them stringing together some wins, but I would be very skeptical on some of these over unders on some of the teams or players, because again, that's just not how or especially Vernon Adams. Outstanding player, unlikely. You're looking at that one at plus 1,500. Like, I doubt it. Again, I could even see him not even getting the nod in the West, because, like you just said before, you got Brady Oliveira, Nathan Rourke, a bunch of receivers that you're great. You could have Trevor Harris again. What God knows what Fajardo or Coleros, could they pull another year out of their ass somehow? Like, you never know. So I wouldn't stick with that one. Regular season wins 8.5. They're to me a team that I could see crossover at like 8 and 10, because the West again's 3 wins, or the East, I mean, it's like 3 wins or 4 wins or 5 wins kind of here. So I could see that, but I don't know if I'd hit the over on 8.5. Like, I'd probably hit the under.
Yeah, and I'm a little concerned too on the defense that they take a little bit of that step back. I think they did lose a couple of pieces on the defensive side off to NFL tryouts. I think one or two of them might have come back. I know Clarence Hicks was a big one, player on this team that did sign a contract back with them after 12 sacks last year. So that's a huge piece for them to get back. Hopefully Fulera Norimolade is back healthy, because that was where things fell off last year. He's such a force on the defensive line that when he got injured, the defense that was carrying this team throughout the season, like how we talked about VA doing just enough and the offense doing enough to get it done, is the defense. And it was Dedrick Mills, in my opinion, that were carrying this team to the wins earlier in the year. So having him healthy on the defensive line is going to be huge for that team as well. And they do have a lot of talent there across the defense, but I think they did lose a couple of pieces along the way. One player that I'm really excited to see this year, and I'm hoping we see him really hit that next level, is Jalen Philpott at wide receiver, because I mean he's had a couple really good seasons in a row. He's battled some injury issues along the way. I think last year he tapped in at like 800 yards, something like that, 830 yards for him last season. He had 659 the year before that, 317 the year before that. So he's progressively improved season after season. We don't have a prop for him, but I'll throw one out for you. Is this the year we see Jalen Philpott cross 1,000 for the first time in his career?
I want to say yes, but then we just talked about, that's not the offensive game style, right, in Calgary, where I think so. I think, I think he's probably getting sick of he has to go to family Christmas and see what his brother did. Exactly like the Manning brothers kind of thing, or other brothers, famous brothers. I think it would be at some point, but receiver is a tough one, because you don't really get to pick when the ball's thrown to you. There's, and there's a button on NCAA college football where you hit triangle and the quarterback will throw it to you pretty much no matter what. But it's you don't have that, right? So, yeah, he could be a play in this, but it would also need Vernon Adams to hit him like in the open space. So, heck with it. I'd probably take the over just because I want it to happen. It might not be the smartest.
Want it to happen so bad.
Yeah, it's a hard overhead bet.
Yeah, looking at the rest of the wide receiver room, this is a team that's probably, in my opinion, going to start 3 Canadians out there. You've got Clark Barnes, you've got Jalen Philpott coming back, you've got Dejon Brissett making a return to Calgary after a really strong season with Toronto last year. That was kind of a real good breakout for him there. So I could see all of them making sense to be part of that, starting offense at wide receiver. Remains to be seen, I guess, what happens with Damian Alford. That's a guy who there was a lot of hype around him last year. I think it's Damian Alford. I want to make sure I'm getting the right Alford.
Yeah, was that Moose?
Yeah, exactly. Had some huge games and then quieted off, but had so much hype. Ended off going to the NFL with the New Orleans Saints. Remains
Right.
to be seen how long he sticks there and whether he comes back. And if they get him back after that, well, that's another Canadian that can support there at wide receiver. Eric Brooks came onto the scene strong last year. Tevin Jones kind of didn't work out, I would say, as strongly as they would have hoped coming into last year. And I think Dominic Rhymes is retired from the CFL now, so that was a member of their offense last year. But Deshaun Brissett, the big one coming back, and the biggest question mark I think for me with this team is what does it look like for Reggie Begelton, who played one game or two games last year before getting injured and missing the rest of the season? He has been the pinnacle of this offense for 4 or 5 years before that. What kind of expectations do you have for a guy that missed most of the season last year?
Yeah, like if Calgary wants to do something, it's him. He's the guy that annoys the hell out of me because you get him in fantasy when he's healthy, and it's just I don't like it's a guy I don't think about. It's a weird. It's just one of those guys, and like he's been there, like you said, 4 or 5 years, probably the top receiver there easily when he's in, and it's just something you kind of overthink. It's like, but I think for his expectations, if Calgary wants to make the playoffs and get on a run, again, VA is going to have to throw it to somebody. And we're just talking about 3 or 4 Canadians that are good out there. That's great. But isn't Bagelson's kind of like the deep bomb guy, if I'm not more mistaken, right? Like the tall guy down the
I think he's
sideline.
more the possession
Is
guy.
he?
He gets a
Okay.
lot of targets. Yeah.
Okay. That's fair. I'm gonna get someone else. Was it Rhymes maybe that was more the deep
Rhymes
ball?
is the
Yeah,
big
there we go.
yeah.
Yeah, there we go. So yeah, he's got to get those yards, and yeah, I would hope VA hits somebody if it's not him or Philpott.
Who interests you most from this team when it comes to the fantasy perspective? Is it Jalen Philpott? Is there?
I probably would say Philpott because I've learned my lesson on VA. I'm probably not going that way, and except for in the all season way, if that's who I get at 6 or whatever, after or whatever all the other quarterbacks are gone. But in the weekly one, I probably would stay away from him in fantasy. Probably Philpott or Bagleton. Again, Bagleton, you got to see health wise because missing most of the year can still take some time, but sometimes time away from the football field helps too. But Philpott too kind of had some injuries, but I think Philpott because there's just that again, like are they twins?
Yep.
Yeah, see twins. Yeah, so
I think.
they share everything, and right now Tyson's doing better, and that's not how you can have it, right?
Yeah, exactly. And he's consistently averaged 3 touchdowns a season. He's got potential for more than that. So if you see more of those, that's going to be more valuable. I think among the receivers, he's the one that interests me the most for sure there, especially given, as we talked about earlier, the Canadian passport and that being valuable in fantasy drafts. VA, I also would put lower on my quarterback draft rankings based on what we've talked about here, but I would not be opposed in like a 4-team league where you're drafting 2 quarterbacks. If I get, somebody like Nathan Rourke early on and I'm going to go draft a second quarterback, I'd kind of be fine taking a chance on Vernon Adams because we know the talent is there and maybe just another year and settling down in Calgary after his first year there is what kind of unlocks some of that for him and brings him back as well. And he has shown rushing ability in the past that could be useful there also. I'm a little bit concerned about the depth behind Vernon Adams this year because last year they had PJ Walker in there as his backup, and he kind of played one game and then got injured and had the season-ending injury, and now he announced his retirement. So, whereas other teams, have that strong veteran backup, in some cases, and some have unknowns, I'd put Calgary right in there. I think it's going to be Josh Love as the backup. He's been with the team for a couple of years, but we've never really seen much of him.
Yeah, that's fair. That's the thing about the CFL quarterbacks. You can't, Walker retires. I just saw Cameron Dukes is not in the league anymore. Like there's these guys who, that started or can be starters or definitely, Walker had his stateside career. And it's just so tough because again, how many teams actually have a solid backup? Like one or
Yeah.
two? Like, Winnipeg, I don't even know we'll talk about it later. I don't know if they have a backup. We can talk about it. Like, we don't know what those guys are going to do, right? We probably know who it's going to be, but we don't know. And then Calgary, yeah. And VA just, again, an injury kind of prone kind of guy when so that could be. But, if they're just going for short passes and run the ball, I guess it doesn't matter who's under center.
Yeah, for sure. And run the ball they did last year. Dedrick Mills, I think, led the league in rushing yards with 1409, or was actually pretty close to the top. I believe he led the league. Let me double check on that. It's not letting me look at the statistics on the site. Okay. I'm pretty sure he led the league. Correct me if I'm wrong. But for over 1,400 yards for Dedrick Mills last year on the ground, which was kind of crazy given that coming into the year, there were a lot of unknowns of was he happy in Calgary, because had been talks the year before about, I think the year before he had taken a step away from the team for a little bit, and then they had constantly rotated people through, and he was definitively the guy, and he broke onto the scene with 3 touchdowns in the first game of the year. I would expect him to, continue to be a top tier running back. Kind of a maddening player for me from a fantasy perspective, because great, he can rush for 80, 90 yards, and he did put up 11 touchdowns on the year, but he hardly ever catches passes. Like, he had, I think, 2 or 3 games on the year. Okay, 5 games on the year with more than 2 catches, and a lot of them without. So if you're playing point per reception and you're not getting receptions, well, then you need 100 yards from a running back and a touchdown to get to something like 15 points along the way. So I think Dedrick Mills is one of those for me that, he's going to be inflated based on the running back or on the rushing yards, but the lack of receiving ability, I would take a guy like Butler. I would take a guy like Greg Bell, Justin Rankin, probably more often than I would take Mills early on in the draft.
No, I agree. So I really needed a Dr. Pepper.
No worries. Not a sponsor, but could be.
Yeah. Side note, have you ever had the strawberry cream soda Dr. Pepper?
I have not.
It is amazing, and it's hard to find. And if anyone ever sees it, text me. I will get it from you. But anyway, side note. Just have to put that out there. But yes, I agree. You know what, Mills, we were just talking about it. Sorry, real quick. Yeah, he did lead the league. You were correct on that.
Nice.
Where you beating guys, AJ Ouellette, James Butler, Brady Oliveira, Greg Bell, you know what I mean? William Stanback, guys who usually would be less, not that Dedrick Mills is surprising, but other names that should be at the top, right? Like, that's a good resume to have that, hey, I outrushed AJ Ouellette, James Butler, and Brady Oliveira.
Yeah.
His
prop is at 1,000.5 rushing yards. Yeah, I'm calling Mills 1,000-yard rusher this year. There is a bit of an interesting depth behind him this year at running back, because they brought in Deontay McMahon from the Toronto Argonauts to back him up, and they also got Tyreek McAllister back, who was with the Ticats previously. He'll probably be primarily a return man, but was really effective in that role before going off to the NFL. So that's a little bit interesting there. But give me the over on Mills on the rushing yards. Did we talk about it already? VA's passing yards, 3750.5. How do you feel about that?
I'll take the under. I got to take the under on something. I never wish for anyone to get hurt, but injury, those 100-yard games, crappy weather in Alberta, or even a crappy weather game in Winnipeg or Saskatchewan late in the season, you know what I mean? I could see the under.
I think, I hate that it seems like I take the over for all of these, and this is probably where they're milking me for all my money. Is 3750. He threw for 4,200 last season, which is 500 more than that, and we're talking about it being a down year for him. So I'm kind of inclined at that low number to take the chance on the over there a little bit.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say I hate banking on an injury, but there's just something I'm feeling he's not playing 13-14. I take the bet that he's not playing 13-14 games, and that may be why he hits the under.
And that's where it gets tricky with these season-long props for sure. Grey Cup odds, they have the 6th best odds. So despite the resurgence last year, not a lot of love here for the Stamps at plus 850. Regular season wins over under 8.5. What do you think?
I already told you under. We talked about that. Yeah, I did. Yeah, I was thinking, did we not talk about this? But yeah, under.
8.5 seems so low. The 9-9 season. Yeah, I got to take an under at some point. I'm going to take the under, I think, on that one as well.
It's a tough one when you're looking at just the team. You're like, yeah, Calgary should be over that. But where are they getting them from when you play, 12 of your games or whatever, 10 or 12 of your games against Saskatchewan, Edmonton, Winnipeg, and BC, right? Like you're going to beat, you think they're going to beat them 8 times combined, and maybe I know they play the East 6 times, I guess, at least the home and home. So you'd have I don't know. I just have a tough time.
Let's talk about the Edmonton Elks next.
Yes.
Finished last in the West, 7-11 last year. Tale of two seasons. Or they start off with Trey Ford, finally give them the chance, and once again a slow start to the year for the Elks. And by week 8, I think it was Cody Fajardo takes over, and same old story. They get some momentum under them. I start believing this team is going to make the playoffs and potentially even host a home playoff game. And then they lack the killer instinct to ride it the rest of the way, and it's too little too late for them. Once again, finishing last in the West with 7-11. Cody Fajardo's back as a starter. Trey Ford is off to the Hamilton Tiger Cats. Taylor Powell, I think, backing up Cody Fajardo. Early thoughts on Edmonton coming into this year?
It's bad. This is a heart thing, overhead thing too. I want Cody Fajardo to win at MOP at 3,000. You know what I mean? That would be great. I want them to win over 7.5 games. If they win the Grey Cup with the worst odds, that would be great. Like, I want them to do that, but I don't know. I don't know. Like, again, it's like I think maybe having a full set. Sometimes it can work and not work, but again, the switching around quarterbacks mid-season. This is Fajardo's team, right? Coming into this training camp, 100% him. There is no young buck necessarily behind him, chomping at his heels. Like, he probably would have a fairly long leash there. So, I mean, I definitely think Edmonton is battling for that crossover. I don't think they're 3-15, but that over under at 7.5, they could hit it again. I think they're going to be in and around where Calgary is. I don't have, but then that is going to be 4, 5, 6 wins less than maybe the other teams in the West.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you there. Edmonton last offseason brought in so many free agents at the start of the season that, like, on paper, they looked like they should be the top team or one of the top teams, and then they just didn't gel early on, especially on the defensive side of the ball. The defense really struggled early in the season. Then suddenly they started to lock it in because those pieces gelled together, and also Cody Fajardo protected the football to some degree and gave a little bit more offensive stability, even if he didn't light it up. That gave them some of that. So we'll see what the defense does coming into this year. I'm hoping we see them build off of that. I'm not sure how much changeover there is. I know there's been a bit of changeover on the defensive side of the ball here as well for the team, and they brought in some notable pieces also, and brought back a couple of notable pieces in their defensive backfield. Namely, I know Tyrell Ford was one of those big free agents out there that there was talk of, is he going to come back to Winnipeg, or is he going to follow his brother somewhere? And they managed to get him back there as well. So if the defense can be better this year from the get-go, and if Cody Fajardo can keep bringing that stability to the team, then I think they have the winning success of a football team that should be able to move up from last place in the West Division standings. I'm still not sold at wide receiver, which was a big concern of mine last year. Like, this team really had no standouts at receiver last year. I think, while Dunbar was pretty good until he got injured in week 12, he had 511 yards leading into that. Kyan Julian Grant was the leading receiver with 820, so nobody even close to 1,000 yards on the team last year. They didn't really address it the way I'd hoped. They brought in some pieces. I think they're good pieces. Most notably, Austin Mack. Joe Robustelli had a couple breakout games with the Riders, and then Brendan O'Leary Orange coming over from Hamilton. They do lose Curly Gittens Jr. over to the Ticats, as I would say the most notable. And Stephen Dunbar, I think. I don't know what happened to Dunbar, actually. Did he retire? He might have retired. Looking it up right now.
I was gonna say, it's almost like we have this technology.
Yeah, we do, and he has retired. So I don't know. Bringing in the guys I just talked about, Mac, Robustelli, O'Leary, Orange, removing Curly Gittens Jr., removing Stephen Dunbar, to me doesn't feel like it's moving the needle very much from where we were at last year. Does it for you?
No, but I mean, Austin Mack's nothing to slouch at. He had some good stuff in Montreal, and Justin Racken again on the back in the backfield. He definitely had big games as well. I think there's the pieces there, and that's what I said. My heart is tired of Edmonton and Ottawa being at the bottom. I want one of those two teams that just have a double-digit win season, and they don't necessarily need to win the Grey Cup, but make it or do something crazy. I just want that because again, you want to share the success around in a 9-team league at some point, but again, realistically, they're probably sitting 5th in this West Division, and this is a team that's going to benefit of the 8 out of 9 playoff teams next year.
Yeah, I was going to say one of Edmonton or Ottawa is making the playoffs next year no matter what. So, yeah. And I think they play each other the first game of the season this year. So get one of them off to a win on the right start right away to start the year. The offense for this team, to me, starts and ends with Justin Rankin. And there's a lot of talented players out there. Like, he was the team's most outstanding player last year, and rightfully so based on his performance. And it was kind of wild early in the year that they just didn't think to use him very much at all. Like, I'm looking at his stats from last year, and in the first 6 games of the season, 7 carries, 12, 7, 12, 3, 3. And he goes 12, then he goes 5. And so this is kind of until Fajardo takes over, basically. They're hardly using him in the offense at all because the offense can't stay on the field with any support around him. Then they gave him 10-plus carries almost every single game the rest of the way. And he had that one game with 200-plus yards. He had a game of over 100. He had 73 targets. He had 713 receiving yards last year. He was almost the team's leading receiver. So I think when we talk about maybe the lack of depth at wide receiver, they kind of have another one that's not playing the position officially. That's going to continue to be the focal point of this team. And if this team is going to have offensive success, they should be easily putting the ball in his hands 20-plus times a night.
Yes.
What do we got for props for this team? We've got, let's see, Cody Fajardo, MOP, plus 3,000. I think that's going to be tough with the, he was the leading candidate amongst this team, I believe, there, or the highest odds. I think that's going to be real tough. What do you think about his passing yards? 3550.5.
Let's see. What did he do last year?
Last year, he had 3408. He averaged...
Right, but that was him
he averaged 200 a game, but he didn't start until
right.
week 8. So he actually averaged 253 a game.
You know what? I'd actually probably take the over, just because, again, he almost hit that not starting most of it. And if he kept on that trajectory, and he's not like he's not done it. It's not like he's not a passer, So I'd hit the over.
Yeah, in the games he started, he was at 3,301. He was 200 and something yards away. So I think a lot of these props are pretty low so far early season. So I'm surprised they are as low as they are. Justin Rankin rushing yards over or under 875. That's tougher for me because it depends how much they give him the ball.
No, that's true. I'm just trying to pull up what he did last year here. So
he had 1,013 last year and then 713 through the air. So I think it'll be close.
Yeah. You should win double if you pick it's gonna hit that.
I'm still gonna say over because we're
Yeah.
talking about a season last year where he had 1,000+ yards, but he had 4 games of 4 yards or less last year, where they just didn't use him at all or he got injured or something like that. So if he plays a full season and he had a bunch of games under 50 yards there, they got to give him the ball like they did down the stretch, and he's gonna find some holes. So I think that's a no-brainer for me. I'll take under on the Austin Mack 900.5 yards though, because I think I'm not expecting Fajardo to push it to the brink. I'm also not that hopeful on Austin Mack. They do have a good connection, but Fajardo also has that good connection with Kai and Julian Grant, some of his other receivers there. I think he spreads the ball around a little bit more, and Mack only hit 674 last season. I don't know if you feel differently.
No, I agree with that one. That's another one that's probably under. Or maybe don't touch, like if that's an option too, just because again, is there going to be any? Like it's such an iffy one because, like I said, what if? I don't know. There's a part of me where I want a couple of these older guys, Fajardo, Harris, Coleros, Bo Levi, just to keep, I mean, Bo Levi has, Harris has, but I kind of want some of that older guard just to have another last hurrah, especially lining up with the rule changes. So it's almost like let the old era out a little bit and have the old timers have their shot, and then what, Rourke and the younger guys can have the new rules, and then we can move on to that. So again, he's gonna have to pass it to somewhere. And you just also said they haven't done a lot in the receiving core. So what are they gonna do? So they have to throw it to somebody. But I think if I had to, like you said, Trey, you have to pick it, I go under.
Where do you land on Fajardo in terms of fantasy quarterback drafting?
I mean, I wouldn't mind him again, as like you said, if you're lucky enough to get Rourke. He's a guy that I wouldn't mind having to play in Rourke's bye weeks, or if something ever happened, God forbid, and then you wait to see what the BC backup does or what comes available. But he's not the guy, like, if he's your starter, like you drafting him, you better have Oliveira, Hatcher, every you better have every other top offensive guy in the league, across the board to make it up. And maybe he could be a play in the weekly one also when it comes to the the dollars, right? If
he's cheap enough,
yeah. We had the weeks where Oliveira puts up 40 points, or other guys like that put up crazy numbers, and it's never worked out, but it's gonna have to work out one time that making your running back the captain pays off. Like it's got to, like, statistically speaking, it probably has to happen once. But yeah, in the season long league, it's not if he's if he's your franchise guy, he's franchise tagged in your fantasy. I think you're just going for a first round draft pick next year.
He's a very middle of the road, like average. I would put in the middle of my rankings. I'd put him higher than some of the other guys that we might talk about here coming up, because he does have that rushing ability, and he is going to. Last year he did rush for 7 touchdowns, and that matters a lot. I don't know if Taylor Powell will be doing a short yardage in Edmonton, or Fajardo is one of those starters who can sometimes be kept in there to go and do that as well. But he didn't really push the needle any weeks last year. Like, he had 3 games all season that were in the top 3 amongst quarterbacks, and otherwise he was kind of hovering 4th and 5th for a lot of the weeks there. And only had 4 games of more than 1 touchdown pass. That's the biggest concern for me for this entire offense when we talk about fantasy, is them actually putting points on the board. And that's my concern for this team as well. They did not do that last year. The defense, when it was good, did all it could, but the offense wasn't putting points on the board. So Justin Rankin, to me, is the only one I'm really trying to strive for in a fantasy draft, and I think he should be one of the top running backs because he'll win you your league on any given week. He's known to put up, and 3 weeks last year of over 30 points. So definitely a high valued running back. I'm not sure I'm trusting any of the wide receivers currently, or Cody Fajardo, besides middle to late round there. Over under 7.5 in terms of cities and win total. What do you think?
I'd probably go under because just again, it's I hate it, but they play so many games against these other teams, right? Like in the West, and it's yeah, like what they play. If they play 3 times against Calgary, maybe they'd split it 1-2. I have a tough time seeing them have any season series against the West. Really, so right there, that's already 8-9 losses for my quick math, right? So I'm gonna go under.
I'm going to go over. I went under on Calgary. I'm going to go over on Edmonton here. They hit 7 last year despite the turmoil at the start of the season. So they did string some together there. And maybe Fajardo provides them the stability they need to at least get to 8 wins to 9 wins, for example, in the season. So give me over there for the Elks. Next, let's talk about our defending Grey Cup champion Saskatchewan Roughriders, who are coming into the year off of a regular season record of 12-6, first place in the West Division. They knock off BC in the West Finals, then they take down Montreal and hand Davis Alexander his first career loss in the Grey Cup. Kudos to the Riders in all 3 facets of that game. What do you think? How are you feeling about the repeat here coming into this year?
I'm actually surprised looking at the odds. I think some of them are disrespectful. So they're plus 600, which would make them what, 4th favorite in the league for Grey Cup odds, something like that. Over unders at 9.5. I think that's disrespectful too. When you just said they came off a 12-6 season, I would have put them at least at 10 or 11.5 there. So you know what I'm going to say with that. And I think Trevor Harris at plus 1,000 for MOP is fairly reasonable. I think his passing yards at 3,900 and 0.5 is a fairly reasonable number. So I think some of this is a little undervaluing Saskatchewan because I've said it a couple times. I'm going to say it again. I think it's them or BC that's hosting the West Final, and it's and I think it just depends on which one of the other 3 teams finishes third. Like I think that's kind of what this would be the 1-2 battle that everyone wants to see next year. I think BC and Saskatchewan this year, and I think that would be, and then hopefully they meet up again later down the road, which will be kind of cool. So I'm actually kind of hyped on Saskatchewan. I think the plus 600 would be the way I would go for Grey Cup winner when it comes to value versus risk. It's not the best number like out there, but again, I think. Let me see here. With BC was the favorite at 380. There's no value there. Saskatchewan's almost got double the odds, so that's where I would kind of go there. Because again, a cold day in Regina in mid-November, I'm probably leaning towards Regina or Saskatchewan over BC. So that's kind of where I would go that way.
My biggest concern is going to be the pieces they lost because they got purged after the Grey Cup win, right? Like they lost a number of notable pieces on the defensive side of the ball that are no longer with the team there. A couple of them going over to Ottawa. I think AJ Allen was probably one of the biggest in that category. They do still have a lot of pieces there. Like you look at their defensive backfield, Roland Milligan's still there, Devon Campbell's still there. Those are the 2 biggest names that obviously stand out amongst them. They brought in James Vaughters on the defensive line. I think they lost a couple pieces there, but they bring him over. He had a number of sacks last year. Mike Rose they managed to bring back. Jameer Thurman's still there at linebacker, and they lost somebody big at linebacker. Was it Darnell Sankey? I think it might have been Sankey who was with the Riders last year, if I remember correctly. But they bring in Josh Woods, who had a lot of tackles last season as well. So they've filled in a few of the pieces where they've dipped throughout talent-wise compared to last season. I am a little bit concerned, even though they had a lot of depth at receiver. They've taken a big hit at wide receiver. Dante Myers is off to the NFL. He was their second leading receiver last year at over 1,000 yards. It was really the Myers and Johnson show as the only 2 over 1,000 last year. And then the next highest was Emilus with 588 in 7 games. Tommy Neal, Joe Robustelli are 2 guys kind of middle of the pack that stood out last year. Robustelli's going over to Edmonton. Neal's going over to Winnipeg. Keon Schaefer-Baker has not stayed healthy in the last couple of seasons in particular. And they brought back Ajo, who was supposed to be the next big thing and everybody loved until he, had to be released because he violated the CFL's policies and I believe got arrested, if I remember correctly, right? So they've taken a hit at the wide receiver talent. I know they've got some depth. They've got some guys like Del Duncan Bubsby in there who might be able to step into that type of role. But I feel like there's going to be a lot of leaning on Keyshawn Johnson and Samuel Emilus at wide receiver this year.
No, I agree with that.
And that makes them valuable for fantasy. Like Sam Emilus should be a first couple round guy as well. Yeah, he only played 7 games last year, but he averaged 15 points a game in the 7 games that he played. He had 588 yards, averaged 84 yards a game. Can't ask for much more from him than that time, and hopefully they get a healthy year out of him. And then, like I said, over 1,100 yards for Keyshawn Johnson. You take out Dante Myers, maybe he comes back at some point. There's going to be guys that step up. I think it's just too early to tell who's going to be the next big piece to step up. So if I'm drafting any receivers from Saskatchewan, it's probably Johnson or Emilus early and then wait and see the rest of the way.
Yeah, no, I agree from that. I see what you're saying with the pieces missed, but there's just something, again, I think Saskatchewan's just kind of built that culture where you're going to lose pieces at some point after you win, right? So, again, I see that, but it's, yeah.
That's no different than what Toronto did for a couple of years there when they got decimated by actually Corey Mace going over to Saskatchewan. That's no different than Winnipeg did with 5 straight years of going to the Grey Cup as well, where they lost some pieces, but they managed to fill the holes along the way. The other storyline for me with this team is Trevor Harris, who I was pretty vocal on this podcast in the second half of the season last year that I thought Grandpa Harris was taking a nap as the season went along, where he was really good early in the season. And then, the second half of the year, Labor Day onwards, was a struggle. And then he shut me up in the Grey Cup with the most accurate passing game in Grey Cup history, I believe, amongst Trevor Harris. He's not getting any younger here. You were talking about the odds of him at plus 1,000 for MOP. Do you think he's got enough left in the tank here at 39?
Yeah. He was another one of those guys, like, I didn't think he would be up in that conversation last year. And what's the difference between 38 and 39? Just 365 days, really. Like, it's nothing too crazy. So I could see... I could see a path again where maybe Rourke gets injured. It's something else, and then and maybe Oliveira doesn't get it's another year where he's not getting touches in Winnipeg, right? So after those two, who is be the next top guy? I'd probably say Trevor Harris over VA or Fajardo, and it's usually quarterbacks or, unless Harris just hands it off to Ouellette 99% of the time. So I don't mind another Harris as MOP is one that I don't hate. Either if you're looking for more value, because again, Rourke's the favorite for a reason and it's not going to pay as much.
Yeah, that's fair. I'm a little lower on Harris, like I said, of just the inconsistencies in the second half of the season. Taking the fantasy angle for it, Harris is pretty low on my draft rankings because he's not a mobile quarterback. And I think a lot of people will put him higher up because they see those passing games, they see the touchdowns from him. But he rushed 53 yards on 8 carries last year. So you're not getting points out from his legs. You're banking on him to throw a 300-yard multiple touchdown, no interception game to hit kind of that 20-point week that I think is the staple you're looking for from a quarterback. And I think there will be a little bit of regression due to all the wide receivers that he's lost this year as well. So I'd be hesitant to draft him early, maybe pick him up late. That's kind of what I did last year, and he did start for me a few weeks, and it did work out well because he had a couple of weeks in a row where he was number 1, number 2 kind of guy. Trevor Harris was, but I am concerned about the season-long consistency if he's your singular quarterback for your team. I think there are a number of better options out there for you. What would you say about his passing yards, 3,900.5?
I'm just too much flipping around here. Just want to see what last year's was so I can kind of see. I know you probably said it, but
45-49 last year.
I go over again. Like, I mean, it's a tough. I mean, I know you got AJ Ouellette back there and stuff, but I would probably go over because he hit it last year. As long as he stays healthy, I don't see any reason why he wouldn't. Again, it would be if you go under, you're wagering that he's going to get hurt or pulled.
Yeah, I don't see him getting pulled. And you would have to do a lot to get pulled there, I would say. I think I'd go slightly under. I'm banking on that regression from him a little bit with that potential for injury also being there, given his age, given his injury history over the last couple of seasons. He stayed fairly healthy last year for sure. He played most games last season, but did miss a couple, I think, along the way also. So give me the slight under on that one. Which wide receiver do you like more, Keyshawn Johnson at 1025 or Sam Emilus at 1075?
I'll go Keyshawn Johnson. I'd hit the over of that.
Yeah, I think I got to go with that one as well. Again,
Yeah.
probably injury history playing into it. It's a safer bet. You know, he's always going to get a lot of targets, and he's going to deliver on that.
Mm-hmm.
What else do we got? AJ Ouellette. You talked about him a little bit last season. Oh, where did my stats go? There they are. Last season he rushed for 1222. And he's got a prop bet of 950.5. I'd hit the over on that.
Yeah, again, the only thing I could see would be injury, and then when he was out, wasn't there a Canadian?
Yeah, there was
took over.
Thomas Bertrand Hudon in there.
Yeah, I'm not saying that he's going to lose his job to Bertrand, but I probably still hit the over. But I guess there's got to be something why they think he's going to hit 300 less. I mean, that offensive line. Hardrick's now a year older. There's a couple other guys. I could see maybe breaking down, or they think Harris is going to lean on his arm more this year. But I'd probably still hit the over because he could still hit 900 and or 950, and I think that wouldn't be crazy.
Where do you rank Ouellette from a fantasy drafting perspective?
I think if you can't get Oliveira, he's got to be kind of in your next two or three. Because again, we're looking at it, or if you don't go with Mills, then you got Butler, which again, you never quite know who's going to get the ball in BC. Racken, like we just said, could be some value there because he does get some receiving yards. And then after that, last year it was Stanback, and then the next the eighth best rusher in the league was Nathan Rourke, and the ninth was Dustin Crum. So you kind of out of running backs if you don't take Mills, Ouellette, Butler, Oliveira, pretty much. Like you kind of start running out of runway here. So I would probably put Ouellette 2-3 there. If you can't get Oliveira, and if you're not feeling great on Mills, I would go Ouellette.
Yeah, I think that's the right spot for him. I'd put him somewhere in that 3-4-5 range myself. I like this pass catching backs. He kind of does that a little bit. He did have 35 catches last year, but I wouldn't say he got a large target share, whereas some of those other guys do. If I were to compare him and Mills, I would probably go Ouellette because of the he gets a little bit more receiving work in there and did actually get quite a few touchdowns. He had like 5 straight games with a touchdown last year as well. So I would take AJ Ouellette there. And then finally the props. So plus 600 was third highest odds in the CFL. I double checked that. Yeah, I mean, defending champs, chance for a repeat. I don't see why not. Regular season wins over under 9.5. I know you teased it earlier. Was that over or was that under? I forget. Over.
I'll go over.
Yeah, I'll go over as well. I think they can at least hit 10 with the talent that they've got on the roster. All right, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, our last team here tonight to talk about. Our hometown Bombers coming off, well, their first time not seeing the Grey Cup game in 6 years. They finished 10-8, fourth in the West. They're the crossover team out to eat the East and lose to the Montreal Alouettes, and probably one of the craziest playoff games I think I've ever seen, where they came back from that like 21-point deficit and then fell off right at the end, and it was a wild game for sure. I feel like you've been all over the place on Winnipeg over the last couple of years. So what does this edition of Trey think about Winnipeg? And let's just throw right into there and get into it. Starting quarterback Zach Collaros.
I'm kind of optimistic in this team this year. Like I don't see, 15-3 and, Grey Cup favorite hugely. Like I don't see anything like that. I don't even necessarily see an MOP Zach Collaros. He needs to be better if this team wants to do anything, or they got to give Oliveira the ball like crazy. But they made some good additions in certain spots. Like you got Tim White in receiving yards. We'll talk about. I'm really excited about Tommy Neal actually too. I think that's a low key baller of a catch by Walters there. They seem to draft well too. There's one tight end, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, that there was video circulating that Walters, the one that they traded up a couple spots to get, right?
Dante Daniels.
Yeah, like so, there's some guys that I'm excited to see what they do. But I think the most important thing is who's the second and third quarterback. I think that is bigger than anything. If it's Taylor, Eggersma, or I'm actually interested in seeing Bryce Perkins. We could say what we want about the UFL, but being the MVP of any league, you can ball. It's still football. So I'm interested to see that. I'm interested if Wilson's even on the team or what they do with him. Honestly, I could see him being the odd man out unless they go with him with familiarity. And, doesn't mean anything. Bryce Perkins' dad played with O'Shea back in the day, so I mean, there's other connections. Is Elgersma the answer too? I don't know. Like he tried the UFL, couldn't get a work visa, right? So I think this was one of the most competitive camps we've maybe had for quarterback in some time. Zach Collaros is the guy, but I think this might I'm more willing to see these other two guys than I would have put a Chris Streveler in. You know what I mean? Like,
absolutely.
So I think if Collaros goes down, I'm not too concerned about these guys. Like, they're going to need some reps, especially Elgersma being, again, sitting in ice camp or whatever till he got his visas figured out or something. I don't know what he had to do down in Birmingham, but it's, and Bryce Perkins too, who's played a little bit, but CFL is a different game. He had an interview saying that the waggle's weird. The bigger field can be weird. These things are weird that you have to when you do 1,000 reps one way, that slight little difference can make a difference, like being a big thing, right? So, but same with Algersma. He's been trying to do NFL and American rules. So again, it's kind of let's see how it is. And I think that's my biggest red markers around who's the second, third, and fourth man out on quarterback.
I was pretty doom and gloom on this team coming out of last season because we've talked about it for years that the downfall is coming, that the team is getting older, and last year hosting the Grey Cup here, that they were going to go and really push and sacrifice the future of the team to try to get there last year is what it felt like, and the team aging, and then last year didn't really go well for the team at all. They bring back Zach Collaros as a starter again for this year for at least one more year. And it kind of seemed a little bit of the same old. But I got to give them credit. In free agency, they addressed a lot of the large positional concerns that I had with this team. Jarrell Broxton was the number one offensive lineman available in free agency, and they brought him in. That was a big hole. They needed that in order to protect the aforementioned Zach Collaros, and I think they did a really good job of that. Defensive backfield, they brought in a big name in Jonathan Moxey, who I think was with the Ticats last season to help shore things up at the defensive backfield. On the defensive line, they got in Jake Serezna, probably the top defensive lineman available or one of them out there. They tried to make some improvements. Unfortunately, man, it really sucks to see that Javon Santos Knox, I know he's had some up and down over the last couple of years perhaps, but and has been around for a long time. But no, he had 80 tackles last season, and former Bomber, a couple of seasons in Ottawa, Hamilton, Edmonton as well, season-ending injury in training camp. So we won't be seeing him this year. That sucks. And then we talk about wide receiver too. That was the big thing. Last year, Chris Streveler had to line up at wide receiver for several games last year because this team had zero depth at the wide receiver position. And they get Ontario Wilson locked up for, I think, at least a couple of years after he came back from the NFL. Then they bring in Tim White. Then they bring in Tommy Neal, like you talked about. You've still got Nick Dembski. You've still got Kevin Sklarcius, who is on the rise. The depth is still a concern to me. I don't see a lot of depth behind these guys, but I feel pretty good about the starting five at wide receiver on this team as well. And I'm so excited to have Tim White in a Bombers uniform because everybody has been hating on Tim White for dropping passes over the last couple of years. This guy has, 4 straight 1,000-yard seasons and 7+ touchdowns a year. If he's catching all of those yards and touchdowns, I don't care if he drops 1 or 2 along the way, right? As long as he's catching all of these, he's going to set the team up for success.
No, I agree. That's like I was the exact same way as you. Doom and gloom in November. I was thinking let's just tank now and get as many first high round picks as we can, right? But that's the thing about CFL. You can buy a team pretty easily in free agency. And there's a lot of decent scouting because again, 170 NCAA schools. There's going to be guys who don't make the NFL, so it's a good. The Bombers, I think, did very well, and again, not even free agency, all the additions you said, and the guys that weren't quite free agency, there's free agency, but it's more the scouting again, finding those Americans that no one's heard about, getting Taylor Eggersma. There is these little things that I'm really excited for this year, but I'm still kind of hesitant on this team because it's all on the guy I love to hate. Is Collaros going to be... Again, my heart wants one more year. My heart wants him, Harris, like I said, Harris, Bo Levi, that old generation. Let them each throw for 6,000 yards and 90 touchdowns. And just, the last year we get the 55 and let's just do it. And, but I don't know if that's going to happen. Right. So it's, but yeah, I'd stay away from him MOP, I think, because the only way I think the Bombers get great success with Oliveira. Oliveira would be my MOP vote for the Bombers, right? So, or my pick depending on what the odds were, but I think that would be a safe bet. MOC, I'm sure he's the second favorite behind Rourke if there was odds. So, again, he might even be the West one because depending on Rourke, but yeah, this team. They're going to have to come together with certain areas, and that defense has to be better. If I hear Ben not break one more time, and yes, and Santos Knox, I hated getting that news when I was at work the other day, because again, cornerbacks is such a tough one. We've had we get a good one like Ford or Rose and this and that, and they're gone and they're back and this and this, and it's just a tough position. Probably the hardest position in all of sports to play. You have to cover these amazing athletes who you can't touch, and you don't know where the ball is going. You don't know where the route is. I don't know what else is tougher in all of sports than maybe that. So it's unfortunate, but I think they did enough in other spots on the defense, and this team has been pretty good at finding decent talent. Again, in those hard to look places like NFL rejects or college UFL, things like that.
The biggest question mark for me still with this team is the offensive play calling. And that was such a huge story last year with Jason Hogan as the offensive coordinator and not using, former running back coach, not using his running back effectively, why aren't you feeding it more to Oliveira if Collaros is struggling at times throughout last season? The offensive play calling just didn't seem to be there. They decided to demote him, I guess. I think he's still on the staff, but they didn't make me feel any more comfortable by the guy they brought in, which is Tommy Condell, probably my least favorite offensive coordinator in the CFL, who also traditionally is known for not effectively using his running backs as running backs. We saw it with James Butler in Hamilton. We saw it last season with William Stanback in Ottawa a little bit as well. I'm nervous for what impact that has on the offense. Now, the interesting wrinkles with it are that he worked with Collaros when they were in Hamilton together. He brings in Tim White, who he obviously has a lot of familiarity with. So I don't know, because his play calling seems very vanilla and predictable to me, and that's going to be a concern that's going to drive Bomber Nation nuts. but there is some chemistry there between the coach and some of the players. And I will say, like, Tim White over under 87.5, 875.5. Like, I'm smashing that. 4 straight 1,000-yard seasons, familiarity with the offensive coordinator who's going to try to get him a bunch of dump passes like he did with Braylon Addison and Tim White before that. I think that's an obvious one to me that's going to go over.
Yeah, no, I see that, but you're saying the vanilla could be what looked at negatively. Do you think Caleros is going to be flashy? Like, do you think you know what I mean? Do you think we need to have
He
a
tries to
super?
go for the big plays.
I know, but does it work? Has it worked in the last year or two? Like that, I think he needs. I think the team that has the success needs to be like, yeah, we have to run the ball, and again, you said do those dump off passes to White, Dembski, the sweeps. We have to bring that back into the mix a little bit. I know the sweeps and those crazy plays was more Lapo spiciness, but like if the Bombers are relying on Caleros going for 400 yards and making like that touchdown pass, what his first game in Winnipeg, at the back of the end zone, we ain't getting that. I don't think we're getting that from him. So I think again we have to set it up, and maybe Condell is the guy again. Familiarity, they know each other. It might just be the setup that actually might be successful because it is. I think that's the kind of game they have to run, the nickel and dime a little bit.
I really like Nick's did this. I like the setup for Nick Dembski also. Like Condell is traditionally, he will use his receivers in different ways, right? For those screen passes, things like that. He loves to do those. And Dembski fits that bill, or like even handoffs to his receivers instead of his running back. Dembski fits that bill. Tim White fits that bill. I like both of them. They're probably my 2 top picks. I mean, yeah, Oliveira is a given. And maybe with Chris Streveler gone, that Oliveira has more chances to actually score touchdowns this year. I don't know how good Olgersma and the likes are in the short yardage game, but Oliveira is an obvious early round pick, especially Canadian, top running back in the CFL. Was one of the team's top receivers last year, where he was averaging 6+ targets a game for half the season. Oliveira, to me, is definitively the number 1 running back off the board in fantasy drafts. Other than that, I'm not touching Zach Caleros. I'm going probably Dembski or Tim White and trying to snag them early. And yeah, maybe I'd take a flyer on Tommy Neild later on as another Canadian receiver if I wanted Canadian depth, because he had a really good year last year in Saskatchewan when he came in. And I think he earned the contract that he got with Winnipeg.
No, I agree. That might have been one of that's that under potentially. I mean, I think everyone recognized it, but it could have been an underrated pickup. By the end of the year, it could be, that could be a guy. I wouldn't be surprised if that's the fantasy darling too in Winnipeg, just as much as Tim White is. I think that could be the difference on this team too, as a pickup like that. They lose Wheatfall, they lose a couple other guys. But they picked up Tim White and Tommy Neild. I can't complain with that offense.
You know what's a wild name that's not currently signed to any team that I just realized? Dalton Schoen.
I did realize that a couple days ago, and I was quite surprised. I had to Google it just to make sure I didn't miss a 1-year signing.
I did that just now.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's in a position where I wouldn't be surprised if he was picked up by Labor Day by somebody when we start getting injuries and this and that, and you start crunching the salary cap numbers a little bit. I'm a little surprised maybe he's not in some camp right now, because I guess camp doesn't go towards the salary cap, so he could be an easy guy to cut if you say, hey, but maybe he's looking for a signing bonus and upfront money or guarantees, right? And teams aren't offering that. I'm a little surprised by it too. He could just be a guy that knows injuries is his life now. I don't know, but I was kind of surprised too when I thought that too. I was like, is this some signing that I completely forgot about from February, where he maybe went to Edmonton for 1 year minimal contract? But yeah.
Yeah, I hope we see him back somewhere at some point. I hope it's not the Malik Henry situation, right? Two straight years, promising top tier in the league receiver, and then 2 straight season-ending injuries. And then, I mean, Henry tried to make a comeback last year, but it never ended up happening really for him.
Yeah.
So Hopefully we see Dalton Schoen back in the CFL at some point here. Final round of props. We talked about Oliveira, probably the top running back in the CFL, should be in draft. 1175.5 on the rushing yards scale, though. I'm going under based on Tommy Condell. I mean, last year he hit just over that amount, I believe. So it's close enough that I'm going to take the under on it.
I'll take the over only because if they do this for a third or fourth year, like I'm just like, or the third year, I'm just gonna like, I can't. At some point, someone's gonna have to say we got to give this guy the damn ball. You know, yeah. So I'm gonna hit over. I mean, again, I think honestly, I think the only thing might stopping is injury again. I think the Winnipeg has to keep him in the run, or keep him in the game plan, or we're going for the first round pick next year, and it's just. So.
Zach Collaros 3375.5 is such a low number, and he came really close to it last year. But I don't know. We talked about not banking on injuries. I can't bank on Collaros staying healthy. I'd go the under.
I go the under too, and not even healthy, but they gave him the contract. I feel like that's a thank you for what you did contract.
Yeah.
And one of the three guys one of the two guys I've mentioned I could see be starting by Labor Day, even with a healthy-ish Caleros. You know, like like if this season, if we're Labor Day is week 13, 14, if the Bombers are 3-4 wins, 3-8, 3-9, whatever by that time, do you really want Caleros finishing out the season, or do you want to see what Elgersma or Perkins can do? You know, like that's what I would rather. So I would probably hit the under.
And then the betting odds seem to love the Bombers as always. Grey Cup winner at plus 750, despite finishing fourth in the West last year, has them middle of the pack. They're fifth highest there at plus 750. But interestingly, yeah, Grey Cup fifth highest, but yet in the over/under win totals, they're tied with BC for the highest projected win total in the West Division at over/under 10.5. I gotta go under a little bit on that. I that seems high for me. Like I think they'll come close, but I'd put them at an 8 or a 9 win season. This feels like a 9-9 team to me.
Yeah, no, I get that. I would look at that Grey Cup winner number, just plus 750 is a decent number again.
Yeah.
If you want kind of I think you want to go for one of those teams in the middle because again, there's no value with BC. Edmonton is a long shot for a reason, so you kind of want to hit something in the middle. I'm probably between Saskatchewan or Winnipeg if I had to pick one. The over under 10.5, because I was thinking about it, I really think Saskatchewan and BC are going to be those two teams at like 12-6 kind of era there. And it's tough to think. I mean, we have seen years where there's a team at 13, 12, and 11. So is Winnipeg that team at 11? Like, it's going to be tight, but I do agree with you. I think this is a 9-9 team that squeaks out third or fights for the crossover. So I'd probably go under.
All right, we've gone over all 5 teams. Let's quickly do playoff predictions and standings predictions for the West Division. So I think, and hopefully this doesn't contradict any of my earlier numbers on the over/under on win totals, which I probably said over on like 7 out of 9 teams. So I'm sure my math doesn't add up here. But I think I've got BC at number 1 in the West, Saskatchewan in at 2. Give me Winnipeg in at 3, just barely over Edmonton, tied kind of in a tiebreaker at 4, and then Calgary at 5. What do you got for your regular season rankings?
You know what? Until further notice, I'll probably take Saskatchewan 1, but BC right there. Like, I think it's going to come down to head to head or who scored more points, whatever the tie break is. But I think each of them is hosting a playoff game, and then I would go Winnipeg again for third. I think I would just switch Calgary and Edmonton around with you. I think I would go Calgary fourth, maybe sniffing at a crossover. Depends on how the East does, and then Edmonton. I think both Calgary and Edmonton would be sniffing for the crossover. Like I think I think they're going to be battling each other more for that third spot. Well, I don't know. I'm worried about a couple teams in the East when I'm a little, I didn't get to talk about last week. So,
Yeah.
but I think that, I think I'd go Calgary, Edmonton.
And then playoff picks, I've got Saskatchewan and Winnipeg going head to head, I guess. Give me Saskatchewan at home in that game. And then give me BC finally getting over the West Division hump and making it to the Grey Cup. I think if they finish first in the West and they get that home playoff game, they're not good playing out in the cold, but if they can play in the stadium, I'm going to say this is the year that they get that done and head off to the Grey Cup. And I think I had Montreal coming out of the East last week as well. So, I mean, that's probably just my dream thinking of a Rourke versus Alexander Grey Cup is something I would love to see for many years to come. Who do I got out of BC and Montreal? Give it to Montreal. I'll give it to Montreal this year in the finals over BC. What do you got for your playoff bracket there?
You know what? Just for shits, let's say Winnipeg upsets BC and BC plays. The field's just wrecked from the World Cup. It just is a disaster in BC, and Winnipeg just wins. Nail biter. Rourke can cry for another off season, and then no, I can't even say. Yeah, yeah, we'll take Winnipeg ups in BC. I'll say it's a nail biter in Regina. Cold Saturday night in Regina. It's going to be a battle of Oliveira and Olette. Give me the Bombers doing 2019, going 2 on the road to make it to the Great. Where's the Great Cup this year? Calgary? Toronto?
Calgary, yeah.
Calgary?
Same thing as 2019. There you
Yeah,
go.
same thing as 2019. On the other side, I'll just give a quick one here. I'd probably have Montreal 1, Hamilton 2, Toronto 3, Ottawa 4. Just for argument's sake, I'll keep it those 3. We'll say no crossover. So I have, what do I have? Toronto going into Hamilton. I think if you ignore the off-field stuff, I think Chad Kelly's better than what he's shown. But we can't ignore the off-field stuff. But I want to see it first. I think I will take Bo over Kelly in that one, and then I'll take Montreal, Winnipeg. I can't do it. Give me Montreal.
Okay, yeah, we're both on the Montreal train there. We'll have to see what Adam says and maybe get him to put his picks in the Discord. He couldn't be here tonight, but anyways, that's our West Division preview. We've done our East Division preview. The CFL season kicks off, like I said earlier, in like 2 weeks at this point. We're targeting next week to be back again with our annual fantasy draft episode, assuming the CFL unlocks it in time. And if not, well, we might have to revert back to our old draft style for one more year here. We'll figure it out. But it's my favorite episode of the year to do, the annual fantasy draft. And as the reigning champion, I get the chance to roast every single one of you as we kick that off. So, if only you had gotten 1 more yard last year, Trey, you would have been saved.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about it.
Looking forward to that. Stay tuned for that. And then obviously we get into the CFL kicking off the week after, which means we start getting into our weekly preview shows talking about, you got a lot of betting, fantasy, etc. talk from us tonight. You're going to get that all season long from us. Kind of similar format, just talking about each of the games. So make sure you follow along all season. It's the start of a new season. If you haven't subscribed before, subscribe now. Help us out with growing the show. And yeah, like I said, we'll be back with that next week. In the meantime, follow us on social media at CF Countdown Pod on X and Blue Sky and Facebook. All the other great shows from around the Canadian Football Podcast Network at CF Pod Network on X. All the great shows in the Alternative Football Network at the official AFN on X or alternativefootballnetwork.com. You can check out Trey's writing about the Birmingham Stallions over there as well. That's an interesting read for me every once in a while as somebody who has not followed a single thing about the UFL but wants to support Trey. So
you got a shout out. I don't know if it's up yet, but I gave you a shout out because Birmingham's coming on the second half of a back-to-back against Columbus, and you know what you always say about back-to-back, so I had to say, I said Ryan is wrong in this one, that Birmingham will win both games because Columbus sucks. So
that's funny. So my shout out is me being wrong.
Well, I said something like my good friend Ryan always says teams hardly ever win both games in a back to back, something like that. And then I was like, but this time he is wrong because Birmingham is on the rise. But yeah, that's actually fun. That's week 9 of their 10-week season, and one team is clinched, and all other teams are no one's eliminated yet. So it's actually been a pretty tight season there. So yeah, check me out on AFN. Thanks Ryan for that. Always got horse racing stuff at Trey MB Harness. What else is going on? It's Western Canadian Driving Championship on Saturday. So if you again, great week to check it out if you've never done it before. What else? I've been quiet. I don't know. I want to try to post some more stuff on AFN for CFL maybe, kind of work in conjunction with the show, but we all know how time is limited. If you want to join if you're in the Discord, make sure you give a thumbs up on the post I told you to if you want to be a part of our fantasy league. I think we had 9 last time I checked, so I really don't want to schedule a 9-team league. So please, someone else join.
Well, Adam hasn't given a thumbs up.
Okay, Adam hasn't.
Did you count yourself?
I think I added it. I meant to.
Okay.
So I think I meant to do it just because I said that exact same thought. Don't be an idiot, Trey. Oh, it's at 10 now. There we go. So then Adam will be the 11th. So we'll have to talk about that. But anyway, yeah, I think that's it. Wasn't 2-hour show. Let's wrap up.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, if we're at an odd number, maybe Adam and I have to fight to decide who's relegated after our poor showing last season. I did throw it out in the group chat from last season because with the new playoff format that I vote this year, top 15 out of 16 make the playoffs to match with the new CFL format. And I don't know. What do you think, Commissioner Trey? Do you think we can make that happen? No.
How the hell would you do 15?
I don't know.
I mean, yeah. Telling me to do 8 out of 9 was weird enough. But at least 8's an even number. How the hell would you do 15? One gets a bye.
I'm just the ideas guy. Somebody else can be the implementation. You can follow me on X at CooperTrooper42 there. I don't really use it very much, but I'm there. But yeah, check out the Discord. Links in the episode description. Free to join us over there. Stay tuned as well on all the social medias for an announcement coming out soon from us. I'm not quite I've been working on a special project related to the show that I think is going to be very exciting, and I am looking forward to unveiling that in the next couple of weeks, so stay tuned for that. In the meantime, thanks for listening, and whatever podcast platform you're listening on, we appreciate if you do all the fun things like comment, subscribe, rate, review, share the show with your friends, help us grow the show. We always appreciate that. Thanks for listening, everybody. Take care. Have a good one. Bye.